Hello and welcome back to the show. This is episode 626, and I am so delighted to have my new friend, Carole Kramer Arsenault, here with me. Carole is the author of the award-winning book, Newborn 101, and founder of Boston Baby Nurse and Nanny, a leading agency of overnight and daytime newborn caregivers and pre- and postpartum support services. As a parent educator and founder of a child care staffing agency, Carole has more than a decade of experience working with thousands of families to help them source childcare and match them with top-notch providers that best fits their family's needs. Welcome, Carole. I am excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Erin. I'm excited to be here.
So before we hit the record button here today, we were chatting a little bit about the stress that families are under through this, particularly through this pandemic. So what is it that you're seeing with the families that you work with?
Yeah, so over the last, the landscape has changed for nannies and daycare over the last, year and a half with COVID. A lot of daycare centers have closed. A lot of small family centers have closed, and the demand for nannies has increased. We're finding that even parents who are sending their kids to school, a lot of schools are open versus last September where, they weren't. But the uncertainty of whether or not school will stay open has created a demand for nannies. And some families, like 3 or 4, will be working together. They'll have a nanny on call. If the child is sent home from school, they need a backup. And then with the schools, you never know, are they going to close suddenly? And after having, the pandemic come on us so quickly and everything closing down last year, this year, parents with the new school year are wanting to be more prepared. So there is definitely a demand for childcare that we're seeing.
Absolutely. And quality childcare, right?
Yes. I think I had mentioned, because of the demand, I think, a lot of people are jumping on and calling themselves caregivers. So we're just making sure that we are very, very thorough going through our applicants. But for families that aren't using an agency, again, just being very mindful to really do your background checks carefully. Nothing, just don't skimp on it.
Yes, I agree. That is not something to skimp on. And one of the other things we were discussing is how parents and caregivers, whether it's a nanny, a grandparent, a babysitter, everyone has the same goal in mind, which is how do we lift this child up? How do we raise them and care for them and love them? And sometimes I think that, and I think you probably would agree, that common goal gets lost in the chaos and hustle bustle of every day. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I totally agree with that. Yes. Yeah. I think, like you said, we're busy. Parents are busy. They're juggling jobs and where they want to make sure that they can put food on the table and juggle their family responsibilities and, take care of themselves as well. And, with the child is being homeschooled or whether he's at school, the activities, there's just, life is busy for parents. Life is busy. And, the caregiver comes into the home and she has to take over this craziness. So, parents are going to go off to work and she has to manage all of the things. So it is, it's a busy, things are busy. Life is a little bit crazy right now.
I was thinking about the relationship and the dynamics between a caregiver and a parent. And you were mentioning how, and I thought it was very brilliant, how important it is to make sure that the parenting or child rearing styles are a good match between nanny and parents. And I think that's so brilliant and wise. It's so valuable. And it also makes me think about how it's kind of like what is the parenting dynamic or style between two parents, two married parents who are trying to jointly raise their child? And I wonder if the communication between the parent and the nanny is similar to the way a mom and a dad need to communicate with each other. What do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right on. And, this nanny caregiver is an integral part of the family. She becomes a part of the family dynamic, which has an impact on everyone. And it has an impact on, mom and dad and their day-to-day life, but it also impacts the child, right immediately, but also long-term, right? Because this nanny becomes a part of the family. So the nanny parent relationship is so important. We're giving our most precious resource, like what's to a parent, right? Our kids are it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love my kids more than anything, and I am trusting them in someone else's care.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure that I communicate with this caregiver so she understands where I'm coming from and what role she plays in our family.
It makes me think about a good friend of mine who his mom and dad hired a nanny when they were very, very young. My friend is 50 now, and the nanny that helped to raise them, and it was the same nanny for their whole childhoods. She died a few years ago, and it was as if they lost a member of their immediate family. I mean, this woman, even into later adulthood, midlife, this woman was still an integral, special part of his and his sister's life and their heart. And they still kept in touch with her. And I thought, wow, that's a really deep, special connection that a nanny has the ability to build with a child and with their parents and the whole family.
Yeah, I love hearing that, because it's true. It has the potential to be a relationship that is very strong and powerful. And it made me think of, I've heard that too. Like, I've heard stories about nannies being in touch for 20 or 30 years. I know personally at Boston Baby Nurse, we have, I love this. You'll like it too. There's a couple of nannies that are getting married.
Okay.
And kids that they took care of, the Boston Baby Nurse, families, the kids are in the wedding, which is
Oh
so
my
good.
gosh.
Like, yeah, they're like 5 now, but
That's so sweet.
Our nannies took care of them when they were babies. And now that they're like 4 or 5 and 6, 7, 8, they are in the weddings. And I have another family I worked with that moved up to Vermont. And one of the nannies that we placed with them was there for a year, and then the family moved to Vermont. But anyway, the nanny's going up for the weekend to hang out with the family, and it's
Oh my
been a few
gosh.
years since the family moved. So yeah, it really having the right nanny in the family and having like the right sort of the right environment, it can be fabulous, right? It's a gift.
Oh, it's such a gift. And I always say that it takes a village to raise a child. Parents cannot and should not attempt this at home alone. We need good teachers. We need good doctors and nurses. We need good caregivers, parents, and all these people coming together to help raise this child to be the best version of themselves. And each person can play such an important, special role in that child's life. And when those relationships are healthy and good, strong, quality relationships and connections, I mean, the child can just thrive at that point. So how do you help parents and nannies navigate these situations that I'm sure inevitably come up where maybe the adults are not on the same page with what's best for the child or how to handle a particular situation? How do you help these parents and nannies navigate those more uncomfortable conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I always recommend that, communication is key, and to tackle problems early on before they even really become a problem, when it's just a question in our mind. And that goes for the caregiver, the nanny, or the parent. When we don't communicate, people can't read our minds. Well, sometimes I think people can. Like, I don't know, there's this, sometimes I do think that people can read my mind and I don't communicate like I should, right? But then just remembering, like, no, everyone has their own perception and their own view. And so it's up to me as a parent, or, if I'm a nanny, to communicate and to tell that person what it is that is on my mind. What am I happy about? What am I not happy about? But taking on any issues when they arise, so that you can find a solution before the tension starts to build, before there's resentments. And you would tackle problems, but also to be mindful, if there is an issue, maybe not to mention it when our emotions are really strong. Like,
Oh, that's big.
pass a little bit and then communicate. So if we're just like ready to explode about something, knowing when to pause and then revisit it the next day, right? So it's, communication is good, but it also has to be calm.
Oh, absolutely. And I really like how when you said knowing when to pause, and then you took a deep breath. And I think a deep breath is such a priceless tool to have in your toolbox as a parent, as a nanny. And this is something we can teach our kiddos too, because sometimes they're going to encounter things where they just want to blow up and yell at the person, whether it's a friend or their parent or their sibling. And that, remembering to pause and take a deep breath before we react, is so valuable. And it avoids so many unnecessary hurt feelings, resentment, anger, arguments, all kinds of bad things. It's so important.
Yeah.
So do you typically encourage the parents and the nannies to first talk to each other, or to come to you first? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. And along that line about, we were just talking about pausing, these are the things that should be taught in like nursery school and kindergarten, right?
Yes.
I was in my late 30s, early 40s when I learned, right? So thank goodness I did learn. But yeah, so some families use an agency and some families don't use an agency, and both are fine ways to choose your nanny. The most important thing is to understand what your own style is first, right? Before we go out and hire someone. I need to understand, what do I want? What is my parenting style? Like, we don't typically give that much thought, but okay, I'm looking for, someone who has the same mindset as I do. What is that? And so, like, just to make some notes to understand our own parenting styles, right? And then once we have an idea what our parenting styles are, then we interview nannies and, we need to ask questions about that nanny style. And, we find that it's sort of three categories, caregivers who are very opinionated and have their ways, and they set out to support families who really, really need a lot of support, because some families are looking for that. And then, we have nannies who are also, very knowledgeable, but they're absolutely fine with managing the household in the way that you parents like it to be managed. Might not be their style, right? But parents are the boss. It's the employer, right? Employer relationship. So, and you have some caregivers that are very willing to, yep, you're my employer. So just understanding what kind of nanny you're interviewing, and the style, because if you're a parent who needs to manage everything, you probably aren't going to be happy with a nanny who also wants to manage everything. So, right, you want to, maybe that's a really important aspect of choosing a nanny. That's, as you know, an agency, one of the first things we do is trying to understand that nanny's style, asking her, what do you do if you don't agree with the parent, right? And so, depending on what her style is, we find a family who she can match, that matches. And I think that's a really important thing for parents who aren't using an agency, which a lot of people don't, is to really put a little thought into it before we jump out and hire people, right? Understand who you're looking for, and then ask those questions to your candidate, and really take the time to listen so that you can understand, and then you prevent, down the road, things starting to happen. It's not something we want to rush into.
Absolutely. It reminds me of a family I work with where the grandparents were the caregivers in the morning before the school bus would come.
Okay.
And the grandparents and the parents' parenting styles were they're like night and day. And the parents tried to address some of these discrepancies with the grandparents, and the grandparents were really not budging on the ways that they felt they were going to conduct things with the kids, with the grandkids. And they tried as many healthy communication approaches as they could, and it just wasn't getting anywhere. So then the parents ultimately made the decision to make different arrangements for their kids before school, because the parents left for work before the kids went to school. And so now the kids have a different setup for who's taking care of them in the morning. And sometimes it's just like that. And I think, the grandparent parent dynamic can be a really tricky one to navigate, because there's all that history of the way they parented the parents, and now they're trying to do the same with the kids. And now it's an issue because the parents on a great, blah, blah. It's a lot of, that can be a very sticky thing to navigate because there's a lot of history. But I think it can also be challenging for nannies or caregivers and parents to navigate when they don't have a history, because they don't yet know each other very well. Yeah. So I think like you said, I think it is important to have those conversations preemptively. And then if something crops up, when it's kind of like when one person is noticing, I was thinking we should handle it this way, and the person, the mom or the nanny handle it this way, to maybe just discuss that and it's just almost like an offhand thing at that point. If you just say, hey, remember yesterday when such and such, I was kind of wondering, maybe bringing it up like that is much easier than if it's been a month and these things have been building up and both sides are getting more and more frustrated because there's a mismatch in how they're handling the kids. Yeah.
Yeah. And all, really great information for anyone who's looking for a caregiver like this. Where did we find this? It's it's hard to find, can't Google it, so right. I love what you're saying, because it's exactly what we experience. We have to pick our battles too, whether it's the nanny or the parent. If most nannies will have a little bit of a different way of doing things, right? And it might not be, it's not wrong, it's just her way of doing things. And it just could be a little bit different than what we're used to. And nannies, when they come to us to work, they've worked with lots of different families, and they've developed a childcare style of her own. And so during the hiring process and the week's early hire, to really communicate. So if the nanny is doing something that's bothering you, something trivial, right, to approach it in a positive way. And I'm going to give you an example. It was we had an incident where the mom didn't like the way the nanny was folding the laundry. And so she called us and we said, did you mention anything to her? And she said, no, I don't want to say anything. Well, we kind of coached her and we said, well, why don't you talk to, I think her name was Bonnie, talk to Bonnie, who's the nanny, and just ask her, tell her that she's doing a great job because you like what she's doing. Ask her if she could fold it differently. And, the mom called me the next day and she said, you won't believe this. I told the nanny, Bonnie, and she could care less. She wasn't upset. She's like, oh, you want me to? No problem. She just didn't know. So it's just like a great example where the mom, she called and she was, oh, I don't know what to do, but I can't. She's not folding it. It's not fitting. And she had the cabinets and the baby's things, the towels, she needed them. And the nanny was perfectly fine with the constructive criticism, whatever you want to call it. But, and the mom was so surprised. Like, oh my gosh, we're so happy. It was so easy, but really I knew it was going to be easy.
That is a great example, because here is, and I love that you said communication is so key. I always say that communication is 90% of the solution to most of our problems. And so I love that you said that. And this example is so great because here the mom had worked this problem into this huge mountain that was maybe insurmountable. And how are we ever going to move forward with this nanny when she doesn't fold the clothes right? And here are the nannies just going about her business, doing her thing. And the mom talked to her and she's totally willing to do it a different way that fits the mom better. Now the mom's so happy. And it was really not a problem at all, but the mom had built it up to be this huge, insurmountable issue. And how were they ever going to get past it? And just that simple idea and that act of communicating about it made that mountain turn into not even a molehill, just not even a blip on the radar.
Right, exactly. Very well said. And you can imagine now what would happen if the mom didn't say anything. It's like there's a layer of negative feeling of something's not right. And then like another thing comes up and another thing. So we're just adding layers. And then all of a sudden, our subconscious doesn't even remember why we were upset initially, but we just have all these little things that turn into one big upsetness or not comfortable with our nanny because of all, right? And the reality, the truth is that we've created a story.
Yes, a story.
And we haven't given the nanny an opportunity to do anything about it or change her ways or, talk to us, or because, we think that this is the way it is. So a lot of times, we avoid so many miscommunications, and then, the nanny's not happy and she leaves, and you don't want to, just a lot. And it could have all been avoided, like what you said, a conversation.
Right. And it makes me think, how many times does this come up just between two people, a husband and a wife, or a boss and an employee, or two neighbors, or two friends, or a parent and a child, where, we have these deeply connected relationships, but this tiny little thing can create such a wedge between us, where if we would just have the courage to bring it up before it festers and becomes this huge problem with lots of layers of resentment built up, if we would just kind of say, hey, that thing the other day, that kind of bothered me a little bit, or I wasn't sure what you meant by it, or whatever. we could avoid so many issues in life if we
Mhm.
would just take that approach of communicating. I think it's such a good point that you bring up.
Yep. Communicating is always, a good way. And like I think it's all also appreciated, and it's mutual,
Mm-hmm.
mutually, communicate with each other. And, I think for parents to really pick your battles and to acknowledge when there's something good is to give praise.
Oh,
Like it doesn't
yes.
hurt. In fact, it helps. These are, someone's taking care of my child, and I walked in and my house was clean and my children were happy and play. I praise that nanny and thank you, and it goes such a long way.
Yes.
It's incredible when we take the time to positively comment on something. It goes a lot further than we think it will go. It's easy to criticize. And for some reason, it's not always so easy to remember to give your
Right.
nanny praise, like, yes, a raise, money is always good, but like, tell her she's doing a good job.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so
Huge.
such a good point. And I also always say that every human being just wants to be seen, heard, and valued. That is our deepest need as humans, I believe. And what you're saying goes exactly to that. The nanny just wants to be seen, heard, and valued, just like the parent, just like the child, and the
Mhm.
teacher, and everybody else. And so when you come home to a situation like you described, and then you take that extra 10 or 30 seconds to say, oh, thank you so much. I had a really long day at work. It was very stressful. And when I walked in, the house was clean, it smelled good, and the kids were playing and they were happy and they had a good day. You don't know how much I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And just that one little, 1 minute effort, gosh, it just builds such a deeper connection between you and that person. And ultimately, like I said before, or like we said before, we all have the same goal to lift this child up and raise them to be who they're meant to be the best version of themselves. And when we can connect and work together well, that's when we're really going to achieve that goal.
Yes. Yes. And we're also role models, so that when
Yes.
we are interacting as an adult, as a nanny, we're interacting in a way that's positive. Our children are going to see that, and
Mm,
we're role models, right? They're going to cut the way we react, the way we talk, the way we acknowledge and thank, and that all those kids pick everything up. So it's there's ripple effects that,
absolutely.
being just being aware, of like saying thank you or please and communicating. They're just such, like, we take them for granted, but they go a long way. And, those, the ripples of kindness,
Hmm.
I guess it just, I don't know, it goes into our workforce. It goes into anywhere we take that with us. And so that mom's going to feel happy, and she's going to be happy and nice to the person at Home Depot. And, the
Yes.
nanny's going to go home and she's going to be happy to her daughter, or like whoever, she'll be.
Hmm.
And that's how we can make the world a better place.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And that's what our world needs desperately right now, among many other things, but just a little more kindness,
Yeah.
a little more appreciation and gratitude. I mean, that's like taking vitamins, I think, for the world.
And Erin, that having talking about this, and the two of us, like, good for you, because the parents want this.
Mhm.
The parents that I talk to, they're looking, they want to be happy. They want their kids to be happy. They want things to be okay. And we just don't know how. Sometimes conditioned for years and years to behave a certain way or to live a certain way. It's only when we hear something like our discussion that, wait, I could be doing this, right? It's like we learn and to make creating an awareness among parents and among, anyone really. This topic could really be taken and help, whether you're, an employee in a big company or your partner in a relationship.
Oh, so true. I mean, these basic principles of kindness and gratitude and appreciation, I mean, they apply across every human interaction we have with any other person, our children, our friends, everyone. It just, like you said, it serves to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And that's what we all want, right? We're all, I think we all share that goal anyway, no matter how we think we can get there. I think we all share the goal of wanting the world to be a better place. Well, this has been such a fun conversation, Carole. I've really enjoyed it. And I think we've given my listeners some really good ideas and some important reminders about some basic things that they can implement if they've kind of forgotten, and really improve the quality of their lives, their interactions, the environment that they're bringing their children up in. I think it's all good stuff.
Yes, agreed.
So if people want to connect to you or find out more about your services, where can they find you or get your book?
Yeah, so bostonbabynurse.com. The book is Newborn 101, available on Amazon, available on some other retail stores. And yeah, we're on Instagram, Boston Baby Nurse and Nanny, and Facebook. And we've got some great content and pointers for parents, families, pregnant to-be families, or families with new babies. So thank you so much for having me, Erin.
Thank you, Carole. This was super fun, and I will be sure and put your website in the show notes so people can find you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Take care.
You too. That wraps up today's episode. Wherever you are in this world, I hope that you make it a kind and grateful day for yourself.